Howdy, friends. My name is Winder Lyons. I'd like to welcome you all to the second of our fireside chats with the redoubtable Edward Stone of Touchstone Essentials, the founder, creator, and driving force of this incredible company. Welcome, sir, and thanks for being with us.
Thank you. I'm going to have to pull out my dictionary. I'm not sure what redoubtable means, but I'm just going to assume it's a positive descriptor, but I'll look it up later.
You keep thinking that. Okay. So I wanted to talk just a little bit about recent happenings with me and Touchstone. I had been away from the company for some years and had been having some issues with sleep. And I had bought some CBD or hemp oil from a company and taken it for about a month and noticed absolutely zero, nothing. And the day literally that I applied for a refund from those guys, I got an email from Touchstone, talk about synchronicity, hello, talking about your new offering with hemp oil or CBD. Now, can we call it hemp oil? Can we call it CBD? What's the scoop right there before I finish my story?
Well, if you're looking for like a broad description, it is really hemp oil, but the active that we're talking about and the benefits people are getting are most likely coming from the CBD. So cannabinoids, there's 100 plus in the product that we sell and offer, and then cannabidiol is the specific one everybody's focused on, and that's we shorten that for description and call it CBD. But if we use hemp oil as our descriptor, then from a regulatory standpoint and control, because we're shipping to 60 plus countries, most of them their regulatory bodies are more equipped to handle that as a descriptor. So it's you could kind of look at it either way.
Okay. Anyway, so when I got some, after I got your email, you and I chatted, and I got pretty interested because I know how everybody's this way. How you do one thing is how you do everything. So your approach to stuff is pretty special, and I got interested in that. So I have this Apple Watch. You see this thing right here? Yeah, and of course a little bracelet to help protect me from all the ill effects of this thing. But it's an amazing device. And so what I did was I started charting my sleep patterns for a week plus before I started taking the hemp oil. And there are several phases of sleep. There's sleep, there's restful sleep, and then there's, I think, the most important thing that's called deep sleep. Now, I don't know how much we're supposed to be getting per night of deep sleep, but I found that I was getting about 15 to 30 minutes, and the average was less than 30 minutes per night. And so, didn't surprise me because I've been sort of slogging around tired for a long time.
Sure.
But I got to tell you, last week, with the Apple Watch, charted my sleep patterns again, and my deep sleep per night has jumped from right about 30 minutes a night to right about an hour and a half. Now, that seems like a good jumping off place. What's the significance of that kind of increase in deep sleep patterns?
Well, that's a big deal. When you're sleep deprived, there's quite a few things that show up. I mean, one, we all know this, right? Your decision making's poor, you're irritable, and there's all kinds of cosmetic issues. You probably have more wrinkles and look older than you are and dull skin. There's sort of all these things, but it can get even a little more serious, right? It can affect short-term memory. We know from research it can affect how you perform on tests. And then it really gets into sort of this even deeper dialogue from a health standpoint that you need sleep, and specifically you need deep sleep in order for cellular repair to take place. telomerase, which is the enzyme that affects your telomeres, we know is just not as effective if there's no deep sleep to go with it. So people that have a lifestyle that's driven by caffeine and high sugar and other types of stimulants and sort of never slow down, people that have a go-go lifestyle, stress-related lifestyle that sort of never slow down, not only are they probably tired and lethargic a lot, their bodies age prematurely because there's just no chance to repair. In sort of the modern world, people just live with this. We have so many stimulants and things available to us. People just sort of live with this, not realizing this long-term repercussion. So for anybody that's, ever messed around with cars or engines or things like that, if you over rev it and you over rev it constantly, it's going to die a premature mechanical death. And we're not too dissimilar. So, your goal would try to be to try and drive that deep sleep number above 2 hours, but getting it even just above an hour and a half is a major accomplishment. And it may not seem like a long period of time, but compared to the broader population, an hour and a half of deep sleep is pretty darn good. And that less than 30-minute average that you were talking about is where most people are and why they have chronic health issues. Their immune systems are compromised. And so it's a big deal that you've done this. And, we could sort of argue about the Apple Watch or the various other ones that are out there that measure these kinds of things. But if you just say to yourself, okay, I'm going to take that as a benchmark, regardless of other scientific measurement that may be better, whatever happens to be. If I just know using this same device, the same pattern, I've improved in your case by threefold, that's a big deal. And I'm quite certain you feel better because of that. I'm certain you're going to control your weight better. There's just going to be all kinds of things that come from this. And so sleep, stress management, things like that. Heck, it's just as important, Winder, as exercise, as eating right. These things are all a part of that holistic approach to mind, body, soul, health. They all go together.
Well, I even had a couple or 3 nights in the last 10 days or so that were over 2 hours. And it was, it's the thing about having a hard lifestyle. I just had my 23rd birthday. And it's just, so
emotionally, I'm sure Lynn would echo that. Yes.
It's a good thing that Pinocchio thing's not real. I'd have broken my screen right there. But so let's do a little bit of, CBD, if my understanding is correct about this, almost every cell in the human body has a receptor site for CBDs. Now, what's the old saying? God don't make no mistakes. So if every cell in our body has a receptor site for cannabidiols, wouldn't that indicate that we're supposed to be having that on a regular basis?
Yeah, I think we could get into sort of a pretty significant philosophical discussion about this, right? But here's the bottom line. You've got an endocannabinoid system in your body, and you make cannabinoids in your body. You don't do so well with it as you get older, right? Like a lot of things, like our production of hormones goes down, and there's just a variety of things that happen that diminish over time. And then some people are born with a greater ability than others, and absent of those cannabinoids and their interaction with your endocannabinoid system, you go out of balance. And it can happen for a lot of reasons. Maybe your production's down, maybe your quality's down, maybe your receptor sites have problems. When you have stress or environmental pollutants or other things, they're competing for that space. It's a physical space. It's not infinite. It's finite. And so when you supplement with a quality hemp oil product, in this case where the active, the cannabidiol, the CBD, is of good quality, good structure, genetics behind it are good, then it's going to increase the balance in the body. So it interacts with CB1, CB2 to impact your immune system and a lot of other things. But I mean, quite literally, harmony, tranquility, homeostasis, which gives your body the ability to rest better. All these things sort of descriptors come into play.
So, okay, so you see all over the place. I mean, there are CBD stores almost in my neighborhood now.
Sure.
And it's everywhere. And so I know the science is there these days. I think it started with the famous case of the little girl with seizures, and that's sort of what it became known for originally. But now, as I understand it, science is uncovering just this myriad of uses for this in our bodies. And I think people are starting to catch on to that. So here you have this offering, which I think is pretty high quality, but what sets ours apart from the 1,000 other ones that are in the marketplace?
Yeah, so there's a lot there, and I'll try to sort of economize the descriptions here. But here's the bottom line: since the Sanjay Gupta-led piece on CNN about Charlotte and her seizures really brought attention back to health benefits of cannabis. But I mean, we can go back a long ways to the 40s and 50s where there was some understanding about cannabis's benefits. But when THC, which is the active component, which is a cannabinoid that causes people to become intoxicated, became an issue, right? There's just a lot of research that just never happened. We sort of set it aside as a society. Research institutions, really because of federal regulations in the U.S., haven't even really been allowed until recently, when they could get variances to conduct research to really dive deeper into these issues. And so we're thankful for Charlotte's bringing this sort of into the public's eye again, so we can look at this, because it's important. Here's the challenge. It's like a lot of things. And for those that see me, they probably think, oh my gosh, there he goes again. But it's just like ultra-processed fast food. Everybody's looking for these shortcuts. And in this case, the majority of the CBD products that are in the marketplace, they're sort of ill-conceived in thinking about how well the body will absorb them, as well as what are the other full spectrum or constituents necessary so that it has an efficacious or an effective impact on the body. And so most of what you see out there are what you would refer to as isolate products, where they're buying large quantities of inexpensive CBD or cannabidiol as an isolate. So the other cannabinoids, terpenes, flavonoids that we believe are important to have that synergistic impact on the body, where you're seeing that most effect, are absent. They're buying them out of China or Europe. In both of those places, they've become really good at producing that in that way. They do it because it's a cheap way to produce a product that would be mostly free of THC, which then makes it easier from a regulatory standpoint. But it's also in part happening because we're behind in the U.S. On production in the rest of the world, because our regulations are sort of slow to come forward. And there's a lot of reasons there. No need to get into that from a political standpoint. And so for us, the biggest difference is we know the genetics of our plant. So the cannabis plant that we're working with, it's a 10-year plus old strain. So we understand in detail that full spectrum of cannabinoids that you find in the product. For people that are looking for a deep dive, we have third-party and internal publication on our website of testing to give people an idea of that full array of cannabinoids that you find in the product. We also have testing that shows third-party as well as internally that the product is free of THC. So for those individuals that are concerned about not just that stigma, but the chances of the product making them intoxicated, that's we're free of that environment. But having those genetic strains means that we understand, because this is a strain that's been studied for medical use, right? It's at a higher grade than the common seed for growing cannabis that a person would find. So we're getting into a little bit of details there, but this is really critical in terms of the strength of the product. So we understand that. the growing process or environment, while there's no official USDA regulatory environment, USDA organic regulatory environment for growing cannabis and producing a hemp oil product. And by the way, you may see USDA on some people's labels. It's not really there. They're probably not going to get in trouble, but the truth is the U.S. Department of Agriculture has not sanctioned a full set of regulations yet. But we're working with growers that for other crops and things they do, they produce USDA organics. We understand about soil, farm implementation, all these types of things that go into this. And so we've got a product, a strain that's properly cultivated. It's harvested. The biomass is harvested at the peak of sort of nutritional maturity. That's probably the best way to say it. We're working with a supercritical CO2 extraction process. That means it's free of solvents, it's free of heats and those other things that could so easily destroy the super delicate phytonutrients that are necessary to be effective, right? So this process, bringing it to the marketplace where it's sort of do no harm, right, as best you possibly can. And then we, working with our farm group and our manufacturing partners, the product is nano-sized and a patent-pending process down to 25 nanograms in size. I mean, so to give you a comparison, some of these products that talk about an emulsification process to make it smaller, those are particle sizes that are anywhere from 4 to 40 times larger than what we're dealing with. So just like in our zeolite product line, the smaller we make the molecule in this case, the more surface area that is created for interacting with that endocannabinoid system that we've been talking about. And this shows up not just in the Calm product, which is for internal use, but even for our balm, the Soothe product, right? Because you put Soothe on your skin, topically applied CBD oil products do not make it into the bloodstream. You may read that on websites, but they do not make it into the bloodstream. There's just barriers there inside the body that won't allow that to occur. They do penetrate the skin and interact with the endocannabinoid system that's in your skin and your skin cells, right, all over. So it can be very effective at relieving joint pain, stiffness, inflammation, just a variety of issues. I had a little injury not long ago, made a huge difference for me in both my recovery time and sort of managing my pain. And so it's all about the care that you take in getting it to the market. And so that when you give it to the person, you're giving that best possible product for success, not just something with CBD on the label. I mean, this even goes down to the carrier oils that we use. So for example, you can use coconut oil. I mean, there's a variety of things you can use. We use hemp seed oil because while hemp seed oil doesn't have a cannabinoid profile or a terpene profile, so to speak, I mean, it's a modest amount, it has a terrific array of omega-3s, omega-6s, and omega-9s. So it's got a very balanced approach to that. And when combined with the CBD-rich hemp oil, with that hemp seed oil, not to confuse people, it's all well explained on the website, it makes for a terrific product, not just like ingestion when you take it, right? So you read on some websites, people complain about nausea and vomiting associated with using CBD oil products. Those are products that impurities really are causing that, products that are not properly checked so that the strength is what it's supposed to be. Ours is 750 milligrams per bottle, and that's exactly what you find in there from third-party testing. So it's all it's a variety of issues, Winder, that are all a part of quality control to make sure people get a product that works for them. And that's what we want because it's great stuff and can make a big difference in people's lives if you give them the right stuff.
So ours is you hold it in your mouth for a couple of minutes and it absorbs through the mucosa. Is that correct?
That's right. So here's what's going on there. If you just swallow it, which you certainly can, now it's got to be metabolized through the liver. And so through that process of metabolism, you're going to lose some of the CBD. So it's going to have some effectiveness, but it's not going to be as effective if you use it in your mouth, allow it to absorb sublingually, and bypass that first pass through of the liver. And it's going to be faster. Now, we do have a product we'll introduce next spring that, because of the sizing and some other things we've done, is also effective if just generally ingested. But for the most part, as a rule, in this type of category, if you put something in your mouth, allow it to absorb that way in those small blood vessels inside the mouth, sublingually, it's going to act more quickly, get into the bloodstream, and bypass that first metabolism. So that's why we encourage people to use it that way.
So ours is organic. It's full spectrum except for the THC being removed. Correct. And you're saving what? Sometimes I've heard digestion can wreck up to 80% of the product, as I understand it. So we're bypassing that.
That's correct.
And you're left with a really bioavailable substance that is, as I understand this, is you have it priced way below what something comparable in the marketplace would be priced as.
You know, and that's a strategy for us. I mean, here's how we feel. We want to make our products as accessible as possible. I mean, we could clearly make an argument to charge twice as much, because when you look at competitors that take the type of time and care to produce a product like we do, the majority of the time they're literally twice our price. But we want to make sure that this is a product for the masses, not the elite. And we feel like we can win the battle from a financial and a business standpoint on size and volume. And so that's just internally some of the decisions we make. We feel like that organic oftentimes can be felt to be sort of an elite term. I think that's because primarily probably the grocery chain Whole Foods, which has been successful at bringing a lot of organic to the market. I mean, not all the stuff there is clean, but for the most part it is. But it's expensive, right? It's the Neiman Marcus of grocery stores. And so you have people that, I mean, frankly, I think they've developed a bit of a resentment even. And so we've taken a different tack to do everything we can. I'm not trying to say the product is the least expensive thing in the marketplace. You can find some isolate CBDs that'll be not worth your time of day, that'll be cheaper. But for a product of this quality, we've tried to make sure we make it as affordable as possible, because we want people to use it. We want people to wake up feeling refreshed and balance on that stress and some of those other issues. I mean, I guess I shouldn't be surprised, because we live in such a high tension, go-go sort of world, and it's hard for people to find a relief, whether it's the things they watch on TV or the news or whatever it happens to be. And so oftentimes they probably drink way too much than they should, and other types of recreational things to sort of self-medicate. And we believe this is a healthy way to do it, because there's nutritional benefit. And so if we can occupy that space in somebody's medicine cabinet or in somebody's life, there's a lot of fulfillment there, and we're still able to make our margins and have a good business.
You know, another thing that I noticed right when I started using the product was, and I'm hearing this from a lot of other folks on the team who are using it also, is a change in my dream patterns. I began to have extremely vivid dreams and then to remember them. Now, they don't always come true. I dreamt I won a bunch of money on a scratch ticket, but it didn't happen. So it's not reliable, but it was significant.
Well, it depends on who you speak to that are in that sleep expert field. But there's a lot of people that believe that dreaming is an active way for the mind to sort of rest and reconcile. And, you know, I'm not an expert in this realm, and so I won't sort of get too deep in that. But I think for the most part, people feel like that when you're dreaming, you're in a more restful place in terms of sleep, just assuming all other things are normal. And when you're not dreaming, then you've not gotten to a deep sleep. And so for a lot of people, all of a sudden it is a very vivid experience, because it's been years since they consistently dreamed.
Yeah.
And got to that depth and level of sleep. And so I think it's a good sign. You wouldn't even have to have that fancy Apple Watch on to realize you were sleeping deeper just because of the sign that's coming to you from the dreams.
Is deep sleep the same as REM sleep?
If you get into the literature, and we could dive too deep there, you're going to hear different descriptions. But I think for purposes of what we're talking about, which is a deep, restful sleep, I think we can say like when people describe REM sleep. Same sort of depth of sleep that allows for repair, both physically as well as in most cases mentally. Okay. And so I think we're describing the same things, but I don't know that we can, from a clinical standpoint, completely describe them the same.
Okay. So it seems that hemp oil has some things that it's generally known for: reducing blood pressure, helping with pain, repair of the skin. The list is seemingly endless. What else are we seeing fairly routinely since people have been using the Calm?
Well, I've got what I call the All-Star 7, okay? And the first one is that we've spent most of our time talking about, which is it supports restful sleep. And once you do that, right, once the body, it's just like when you introduce good nutrition to the body, good clean air, exercise, water, all these things, you start positioning the body for better performance, right? And so you get better rest, your vanity issues, right? Your skin, the tone, the glow, a more rested person is more likely to be able to control their weight. There's this cascade of healthy benefits that come from just sleeping better, right? Now, combine that with the attribute of easing stress, because when it interacts with CB1 and CB2 and it brings a homeostasis to your nervous system, then your production of stress chemicals is going to diminish even when presented with a stressful situation, and not artificially, not like the suppression of a prescription drug. So now your body's not trying to manage all those stress markers or stressors that can make you not sleep well, right? I mean, it's just this incredible array of benefits that sort of build together almost like a snowball. The other number 3 for me would be it helps to fight inflammation. We describe it as fight inflammation temporarily, but the reality is if you day in and day out are using something that helps to eliminate inflammation, that now has a cascade effect as well. So, we're resting better. We're relieving stress by bringing balance to the nervous system. We're fighting inflammation. When you fight that inflammation, number 4 for me that comes up is it sort of calms that joint discomfort. And that's one reason why for a lot of people, you've probably seen over-the-counter products like Tylenol, Advil, some of these sort of pain relievers advertising sleep formulas. Well, what they realize is even if they didn't call it a sleep formula, they probably do that because it helps them, make a little more money, a little higher price point, is when you relieve either that way or naturally joint pain and stiffness, people don't wake themselves up as they move around in the bed. And if they are in a comfortable position where their joints aren't hurting, they're less likely to be restless in bed. And so there's, again, this cascade effect that comes about, right? So that joint discomfort relief is impacting the quality of the sleep that you're getting, which probably makes you less stressed when you wake up in the morning. All these things are sort of tumbling together to create this cascade effect. The impact on the heart, which for me is number 5, anytime you can reduce those stressors in the body, now the body is producing less free radicals, which we know can cause all types of impacts on the body, including making things like cholesterol, lipids, and other components in your blood work more sticky, right? Because of the impact of the free radicals, and so there's all kinds of things going on there. So now you're going to see, for most people, their markers for cardiovascular disease improve, right? Because they're sleeping better, less inflammation. And then the other thing that people forget is because of the flavonoid profile, this product is an excellent antioxidant product. So, most of us realize we need more fresh fruits and vegetables in our life with an ample supply of quality antioxidants to fight the general free radicals. And, as we get older, having just had your 23rd birthday, you're not there yet on this, but you begin to realize that, you don't fight free radicals like you used to, quite literally, internally and externally, right? That's probably a true statement. And then the final for me is, and now this one is one where you're going to see more and more articles published, exercise recovery. And exercise recovery, that's one way to describe it. But I mentioned before, about 5 weeks ago, was kind of messing around with my son and some friends that they had a skateboard, and I've ridden a skateboard most of my life, but on this particular day, I should not have ridden the skateboard, but I took a really hard, nasty fall and injured myself, not unlike I'd been in a darn car accident, hitting my head, dislocating my elbow, shot my humerus, broke free of the capsule and shot out the side of my arm. It was just really a catastrophe. And so I had a couple days in the hospital and surgery and just all these things. And so going into it, even though that particular moment wasn't shiny, I had some things going for me. I've got a good foundation of health and nutrition habits that I've cultivated for literally decades. And so it's not like you want to be in a good position to try to manage something like this, but I was in a pretty good position as a 55-year-old man to be in reasonable shape, and someone's paid attention for a very long time to the issues that we've been talking about. And then once I left the hospital, I couldn't control what they were putting in that IV bag to help control pain. So there were narcotics when I was in the hospital. But once I left there, I didn't use the narcotics that they sent me home with, because I just used my hemp oil to manage the pain. And it by no means wasn't unmanageable. I managed it just fine. And that's in part because I wasn't just trying to manage pain. I was trying to manage the inflammation and the other things. And so just like I'm recovering in that particular case from a significant and a meaningful injury, but even your everyday exercise, if you're lifting weights or you're following a high intensity interval training routine, that's all about creating this controlled injury to your body, so your body responds to it by building muscle or lung capacity or whatever it happens to be. That's what exercise is all about. And so in a minor way, it's like trying to repair the system. Well, guess what? The hemp oil product, the CBD rich hemp oil product is just fantastic at doing that, right? And so that, to me, is sort of that number 7 on that major list of things that it does. And I'll tell you, you're going to see some great articles about that, where endurance athletes and everyday warriors, people just going out into the yard this time of year and raking leaves, that don't want to wake up that next day feeling it, right? An ample amount of the hemp oil that evening and the next day, and they're not going to have the same level of pain and discomfort, and they're not going to be forced to use something like a Tylenol or an Advil, which can have, particularly with long-term use, quite detrimental impact on the kidneys and liver.
What's an ample amount? Now, my understanding of when beginning these things, that you should sort of, I hate to use the term carbo load, but load up on having more in your system in the beginning, and that can taper off as you go. Is that correct? Is there benefit to doing that, or should it just be the normal label thing, which is two droppers a day?
Well, because the regulatory environment is so loose here, we're trying to make sure that we're kind of conscious of that. For me, my personal experience with things of this kind is that there is an advantage to loading. To sort of getting the system, saturated maybe isn't the right way to say it, but if I were someone in just sort of reasonable health and circumstances, and I was just trying to improve my rest, maybe manage some stress, instead of the one tincture before bed, I'd probably use 2. But at the same time, you want to be careful not to use too much, right? You don't want to create an overstimulation of the endocannabinoid system in the beginning. You want to allow it to absorb and assimilate, what you're putting in there. But I would probably use a couple of tinctures. When I injured myself, I was using a full tincture 4 and that's the pipette, the little dropper, 4 to 6 times a day. But I mean, I was dealing with a major body crisis and an arm that was about 3 times the size it was supposed to be because of the inflammation from the injury. So there you go. So that's a pipette, and I would fill that pipette, a couple times if I were just starting it, and probably within 7 to 10 days, you can sort of feel what's effective for you. There's a lot of people that a half a pipette's probably going to do it for them, about 20 minutes before they get ready to go to bed. But you just may be a high enough strung person, the work you do or other habits you have, where it's going to take a full pipette or 2. The one thing I encourage people is that this is not a drug, and so it's not going to knock you out. You've got to prepare yourself like you want to go to sleep. So, turn the phones down and put away the screens, and you get yourself into a place where you're preparing yourself to go to bed. And this is going to assist you in doing that, and it's going to do it quite effectively. So
let's see the elbow here.
Oh Lord, we don't want to do that. It doesn't look good.
No, just, so you're
I've got it all covered. I don't want anybody to see what's underneath there. It's not pretty.
So you're taking that puppy to rehab how many times per week?
Well, it's interesting. The inflammation just came down enough this week to be able to do the rehab a couple visits a week, but to do the exercises on a daily basis. So believe it or not, I'm 4+ weeks into this thing, and they would not allow me to do the exercises. I've got a brace. I don't have it on right now because I noticed earlier I was bumping the mic, but it keeps it locked in because when my humerus broke the capsule, it sort of broke the side of the capsule, and so that capsule has to heal,
repair.
And so just this week, I've got to the point where I can go and do the exercises. And I got to tell you, the lady didn't think I'd be able to do them and stand the pain without taking something, but I felt great. Now, could be a lot of mind over matter, because I'm psyching myself to do it. I don't care. The end result was I've got my hemp oil going, and I'm intending to beat all of their estimations on when I should be back to normal.
So how is the expectation? I mean, are they suggesting that you're doing below average, or above average in your recovery from that pretty damn serious injury?
Well, since my wife is not here, I can do this. I can brag a little bit, but they said I'm an exemplary patient and exceeding all expectations. And in fact, my doctor, who's you reach that point where the doctors are younger than you, and he's a great guy, and sent me some photos of my arm during surgery that, you wouldn't have had that back in the day, right? But he was quite happy to pull his iPhone out and take some photos of me. He's a elbow expert, had a nice fellowship on it. And he was just shocked that, he said, I'm probably 6 to 8 weeks ahead of his schedule.
Whoa.
At this point.
That's significant.
Yeah, he said there is a good chance in the new year I could get back to my terrible golf game. So I said the world won't miss it, but he said I told him I'd like to be able to have my recreation of shooting a bad round of golf. So he said, new part of the year, you might just be there. So
not on a skateboard though, I'm assuming.
Not on a skateboard, but I have to tell you, I got enough rebel in me. I'm not ready to cash in my skateboard badge just yet. You probably will laugh at me, but I was going to get myself a Christmas gift this year that's called a one wheel, and it's a skateboard with batteries. If people can look it up, got about a 27-mile distance. And I rode one this past spring and fell in love with it. I mean, I'm super glad they didn't have those when I was a kid. But now at this age, I don't know. I'm just sort of attracted to that, maybe a little bit rebellious lifestyle, but there'll be a lot of caution.
You got to put bubble wrap all around your body.
Yes, there'll be a great deal of caution. I'm committed to that for sure.
Well, are there any downside to somebody using the hemp oil? I mean, is there a detox involved, or is there anything that people should be cautious about with starting the product?
We're a super cautious organization, and people have seen our labeling. We don't make claims, and We have lots of warnings that are probably overboard. And so I would tell people, if you've got medical conditions or concerns and things, talk to your doctor. But as we look at CBD oil, hemp oil, good products, right? I'm not talking about things laced with THC or recreational, setting all that aside, there's just really no side effects to speak of. Incredibly safe. Much more concerns with people drinking coffee and caffeine. I mean, even taking greens, right? Sometimes greens, you need to look at the prescription medication someone's using because it may interfere with a blood thinner or whatever. There's just none of that we really know of right now with the hemp oil, the CBD-rich hemp oil. So incredibly safe. I know people using it with young kids and older adults, and no contraindications related to the medicines they're using. But if you are taking significant medicines, you do want to talk to a doctor. But, right now, I think it's probably as safe a product winder as we've ever had a chance to work with. And that's also just in part of our excitement for it. We've already introduced the Calm 750. So that, it's called Calm Hemp Oil 750. That means that in that bottle, there's 750 milligrams of cannabidiol or CBD. That's what that means, to be clear. You've got the Soothe 600. And so that's that clean balm. And that balm has 600 milligrams of cannabidiol or CBD. And then you've got the PET 250. And the PET 250, it's important for people giving this to their pet. They should not be giving their pets products that have THC in them. Pets can have an acute toxicity to THC or develop one over time. Their livers don't process it well. So just keep that in mind. And that's the product we have that doesn't have a flavoring, because pets tend to enjoy things, although mine will have both the mint and the plain, my dog, but they tend to prefer things without a flavor. And so those are the first three that we have. And then we'll introduce before the end of the year a product that's called Advanced. And it'll look somewhat similar to what we have. That'll be Calm 1500. So that's 1,500 milligrams of CBD oil per bottle. But it will also have that minimal amount of THC, not THC that would make a person intoxicated, but at that level, at 1,500, you've got some folks that are using it to manage pretty significant sort of pain and stress-related issues. And so we want to make sure that the public's got a good, clean access to that full spectrum of products. And then we've got some, I won't go into the details, but we've got a couple other products that we'll introduce in the new year, including one that the way we micronize it and prepare it will be effective to put in your coffee or your tea, even though it would go through that first level of metabolism. The particle size is so small, it'll be effective. So we want this to be available to people in a variety of delivery systems because we know it's an important product.
I actually have some homeopathists on my team who are buying the pet product and using it with their patients, because they say if someone's taking a homeopathic remedy, the mint can interrupt that. And there hasn't seemed to be any issue with it, although they're barking and scratching funny.
That product is made with every bit of the same standards as anything else we do. It's a label to indicate, a target audience, but it's just a milder form of the Calm 750 because it's Calm 250 and it doesn't have the mint in there. And so there's nothing in there that makes it dog or cat friendly. And if I had a bottle in here, I'd use some just to demonstrate that it's just fine for humans. And we do have a lot of people that are, in fact, I'm pretty confident at least half the people buying that are just buying it for people and not just for pets. But, we wanted to make sure people knew that it's a very pet-friendly product because it doesn't have the THC and or the flavoring.
Well, they'd have to take more than the 750 though, right? Per dose of some of them.
Yep. That's correct to get to the same dosage amount. But, it's
less expensive.
People, and people react differently though. And people with lower body weights, people getting under 100 pounds in body weight, that 250 may be all that they need.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Well, this has been a very fun and enlightening conversation. Is there anything you'd like to end with for this of our second fireside chat?
Well, as always, we'll take comments below and questions, and we'll get to those as we do other shows. And we'll try to keep the skateboard talk to a minimum going forward. You have my commitment on that, but appreciate everybody taking the time to listen to what we're doing. These details I'm speaking of are all on the website. So if you go to the website, click on the shop button, click on the product you're looking for, you're going to see an overview tab, a benefits tab, a science tab, an FAQ tab. You'll be able to see reviews, bullet points, downloadables. And so as deep as you want to go, we've got that information there, references to studies. And then you can also go over to the community tab and click on blog and see very specific targeted pieces, anywhere from 400 to say 900 words on specific subject matter, such as I mentioned, CBD oil and inflammation. We've got a nice piece up on the blog about that. And so educate yourself. The more you learn, the more you're going to want to use the product.
Sir Edward Stone, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Winder.
Talk to you soon.
Yes, sir. Bye-bye.